The little girl's laughter echoed through the shelter until she stopped in front of a cage no one else dared to approach. Inside stood a strange, hairless dog with golden eyes that seemed almost human. "Mom, he's looking at me," she whispered. The shelter worker frowned. "That one's not for adoption." But before she could explain, the gate latch clicked open. The dog calmly walked out and sat beside the girl like he had been waiting for her all along. The family thought they'd saved a broken soul, a lonely animal in need of love. But days later, strange things began to happen. The dog reacted to sounds no one else heard. When the family rushes him to the vet, everything changes. The vet's face drains of color, his hands trembling as he whispers, "This isn't just a dog." Moments later, he picks up the phone and calls the police. Then they realize the truth. They hadn't adopted a dog. They brought home a secret. What happened next shocked everyone. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The Harper family had always dreamed of having a dog. After years of saving and settling into their new lakeside home, they finally decided it was time. The kids, Lily and Jack, were beyond excited. They spent the night before the visit scrolling through photos of rescue dogs, imagining which one would soon become part of their family. The next morning, the sun shone bright as the family pulled into Willow Bend Animal Rescue, a quiet place surrounded by cornfields and a winding river. Inside, the smell of disinfectant mixed with faint whimpers and barks. Rows of kennels lined the walls, each holding a story of abandonment and hope. Lily ran ahead, her pigtails bouncing while Jack clung to his father's hand. Overwhelmed by the noise, Mrs. Harper spoke kindly to the shelter attendant, a woman named Diane, whose face carried years of experience and a soft sadness. Diane smiled when she learned they were looking to adopt. "We've got plenty of good dogs needing homes," she said, "but there's one you might want to see last." Her tone was strange, cautious, as if unsure whether to mention it. They began walking through the aisles. Golden retrievers wagged their tails, eager for attention. A border collie spun in circles, barking playfully. But then, as they turned the corner, Lily stopped dead in her tracks. Her small voice broke the air. "Mom, look." In the farthest cage, half hidden in shadow, stood a dog unlike any they had ever seen. His body was lean, almost too perfect in proportion. His skin was dark, smooth, and hairless, except for a faint ridge running along his head. Most unsettling of all were his eyes, golden, sharp, and unblinking. Diane's expression stiffened. "That's Eclipse," she said quietly. "He's different." The father frowned. "Different how?" "He was brought in by Highway Patrol, found wandering near an abandoned research facility 2 weeks ago. No collar, no tag. We scanned for a microchip. Nothing registered." She hesitated, lowering her voice. "He doesn't bark, doesn't eat much, watches everyone who walks by, but never approaches." Lily took a step forward, pressing her small hand against the glass. "He's not scary." "He's sad," she whispered. To everyone's surprise, the strange dog slowly walked closer and sat down in front of her. Silent, still, but somehow protective. His gaze softened, his head tilting slightly as if recognizing her. Diane blinked, visibly uneasy. "He's never done that before." Mr. Harper knelt beside his daughter. "Maybe he just needs someone to trust," he said. His voice carried warmth, the kind of optimism that sometimes overrides caution. Diane bit her lip. "Look, I have to be honest. I was told to keep him under observation for another week. But if you're sure," Mrs. Harper glanced at her husband. The dog hadn't moved an inch, still sitting before their daughter like a statue carved from loyalty itself. "We'll take him," she said firmly. Diane hesitated, then signed the papers. "All right," she murmured, "but please call me if he behaves strangely." As the family drove home, the dog sat silently in the back seat between the children. The sunlight reflected off his sleek skin, making him look almost bronze. Lily leaned close, whispering, "We'll take care of you, Eclipse." He turned his head and looked directly into her eyes. For a fleeting second, she could have sworn he nodded. When they arrived home, Eclipse immediately began pacing near the windows, sniffing the air, alert but calm. That night, while everyone slept, he remained awake, sitting by the front door, staring out into the dark fields as if guarding against something unseen. The Harpers had brought home more than a dog. They had brought home a mystery. The first few days with Eclipse were peaceful, almost too peaceful. The Harpers expected the usual chaos that came with bringing home a new dog, barking, exploring, perhaps a little mischief. But Eclipse was eerily quiet. He moved through the house like smoke, his steps soundless, his golden eyes always watchful. Lily adored him from the start. She'd sit beside him on the living room floor, drawing pictures while he lay still as a statue. When she giggled and tried to pet his head, he tilted slightly as if trying to decode her laughter. Yet, when anyone else approached, his posture shifted, alert, calculating, cautious. Mrs. Harper began noticing strange habits. Eclipse wouldn't touch regular dog food. Not even freshly cooked meat tempted him. But late at night, when the house was quiet, they'd hear faint clinking from the kitchen. Once, Mr. Harper got up to check and found Eclipse sitting near the window, staring outside the bowl untouched, but the refrigerator door slightly ajar. "Maybe he's just nervous," Mrs. Harper said, trying to reassure herself. But unease was slowly creeping in. The first real incident happened on a Wednesday evening. The family was watching TV when a commercial for police K-9 units came on. Dogs barking, sirens blaring, commands shouted. Eclipse's ears twitched. In a split second, he sprang to his feet, growling low, eyes fixed on the screen. His body trembled as if some deep instinct had been triggered. "Hey, it's okay, buddy," Mr. Harper said, grabbing the remote and muting the sound. But even after the screen went dark, Eclipse stood there breathing heavily, eyes wide, tail stiff. The next morning, when Jack opened the door to go to school, he found the dog already sitting at the threshold, blocking his path. Not aggressive, just guarding. Eclipse's gaze flicked to the tree line beyond the fence, and back to Jack. It was as if he was scanning for danger no one else could see. By the third day, the neighborhood had started whispering. A man walking his poodle stopped to stare. "That's some kind of exotic breed, huh?" he said. "Looks more like a wild animal than a dog." Mr. Harper laughed awkwardly, but deep down he wasn't so sure anymore. Eclipse didn't play, didn't bark, didn't act like any dog he'd ever known. Yet he always seemed to know when someone was approaching minutes before the doorbell rang. His head would lift, his body tense, ready that night. Lily placed her sketchbook beside him and whispered, "You're our protector, right?" The dog blinked once, slow and deliberate, then turned toward the window again. Moonlight glowed against his smooth skin as he watched the dark horizon beyond the yard. His ears flicked at every sound, rustling leaves, a distant owl, a far-off hum of engines. Something in his posture sent chills through Mr. Harper, who stood behind him silently, unsure if his new pet was watching for danger or waiting for it. The Harpers didn't know it yet, but Eclipse wasn't just adjusting to their home. He was preparing for something. It was past midnight when Mr. Harper first heard it. A faint metallic rattle like a chain brushing against the fence outside. At first he thought it was the wind, but Eclipse's sudden growl froze him in place. The dog, usually silent and composed, had risen from his spot by the door, his muscles tight, ears forward, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Eclipse," Mr. Harper whispered. But the dog didn't turn. Instead, he crept toward the back door, each step deliberate and quiet. The growl deepened, a low rumble vibrating through the floorboards. Mr. Harper grabbed a flashlight and slowly opened the door. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp soil and wild grass. Eclipse slipped outside first, moving with eerie precision. No hesitation, no sound of paws on gravel. His head stayed low, eyes scanning the dark yard. The beam of the flashlight swept across the grass. Nothing. But then, just as Mr. Harper was about to step forward, Eclipse's posture changed. His body stiffened, tail pointed, a sharp snarl ripping through the silence. In an instant, he bolted toward the fence. "Eclipse, come back!" Mr. Harper shouted, chasing after him. The dog was already at the far end, teeth bared, barking for the first time since they'd brought him home. A deep, guttural sound that didn't quite resemble an ordinary bark. It was a warning. The light caught something odd. The fence was bent outward. The wood splintered as if someone had tried to climb in, and there pressed into the mud were boot prints. Not animal. Human. Mr. Harper's stomach tightened. He scanned the woods beyond, but saw nothing except swaying branches. Eclipse stood at the fence, unmoving now, staring into the darkness, a faint growl still rumbling from his throat. The next morning, the scene looked even worse in daylight. The section of the fence had been forced open just enough for a person to slip through. The ground was torn, and fresh mud streaked across the grass toward the trees. Mrs. Harper's hand flew to her mouth. Someone tried to break in. Mr. Harper nodded grimly. "Looks that way." Jack, curious and scared, asked, "Did Eclipse stop them?" "Maybe," his father said softly, glancing at the dog, who now lay under the porch, eyes half closed but alert. "Or maybe he scared them off before they got the chance." The family filed a report with local police, who promised to patrol the area. But even they looked uneasy when they saw the prints. Too deep, too deliberate, as if whoever made them had been trained not to leave a trace. That night, the Harpers double-checked the locks. Eclipse once again positioned himself by the window, eyes fixed on the fence line. Mrs. Harper whispered, "How did he know they were there before we did?" No one answered. Outside, the wind howled softly through the trees. Inside, the strange dog waited, every muscle ready, not out of fear, but instinct. Something had come for them once, and Eclipse knew it would come again. By the end of the week, Mrs. Harper couldn't shake her concern. Eclipse had stopped eating entirely and seemed restless at night, pacing the hallway like he was waiting for something. His ribs were visible, yet his energy never faded. He would suddenly freeze, ears pricked, staring at the window as if hearing sounds no one else could. "Something's not right," she finally said over breakfast. "He needs a checkup." Mr. Harper agreed. Even though Eclipse had saved them from whoever broke the fence, his behavior was too strange to ignore. So that Saturday morning, they loaded him into the back seat. The dog didn't resist. He sat perfectly still, eyes fixed out the window the entire drive, watching the passing cars as though memorizing every turn. The small-town clinic was calm and bright, filled with posters of smiling pets. The vet, Dr. Ellis, greeted them with a warm smile. "So, this is the new family member?" he said, reaching down to pet Eclipse. But as soon as his hand neared, the dog stiffened, his eyes locked onto the vet's face, unblinking. "Doc Arntor." Ellis paused, lowering his hand slowly. "All right, we'll go gentle," he murmured. He motioned for a nurse to hold the leash while he began the examination. "Let's see what's going on with you, buddy." At first, everything seemed routine, checking weight, temperature, and reflexes. But as the vet ran the scanner over Eclipse's neck, the device beeped sharply. The screen lit up with data, then blinked red. Dr. Ellis frowned. "That's odd," he muttered. He tried again. Same result. A registered microchip, but with no owner ID, only a long alphanumeric code followed by the word restricted. "What does that mean?" Mrs. Harper asked. The vet forced a polite smile. "It's probably a glitch. Some old shelter systems still use outdated chips." But there was a flicker of unease in his eyes that didn't go unnoticed. He drew a small blood sample, then excused himself, saying he'd check the database. Minutes passed. Then 15, Mr. Harper glanced around nervously. The nurse avoided eye contact. From behind the office door, faint voices echoed, hurried, serious tones, then the sound of a phone dialing. When Dr. Ellis finally returned, his face was pale. "I'm so sorry for the delay," he said carefully. "Could you all wait here for a moment? There's just an irregularity I need to confirm." Mrs. Harper frowned. "Is something wrong with him?" The vet hesitated. "It's best we wait for." Before he could finish, distant sirens pierced the quiet morning air. They grew louder, closer. The Harpers turned toward the window, confused. Moments later, flashing blue and red lights flooded the parking lot. 2 police cars screeched to a stop outside. Officers stepped out quickly, hands on their belts, eyes scanning the building. Mr. Harper stood up, heart racing. "What's going on?" Dr. Ellis swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, just stay right where you are." Eclipse's head lifted, his golden eyes narrowed, muscles tightening as if he already knew. Something far bigger than a vet visit had just begun. The room fell into a thick silence, broken only by the echo of approaching boots. The officers entered the clinic swiftly, their expressions grim and purposeful. One of them, a tall man with a badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, spoke in a tone that left no room for questions. "Who brought in the animal?" Mrs. Harper's heart skipped. "We did," she said, her voice trembling. "Is something wrong with him?" The vet swallowed, looking between the officers and the family. "Please, everyone, just stay calm." But calm was impossible. 2 officers approached the examination table, eyes locked on Eclipse. The dog stood perfectly still, silent yet tense. The air seemed to hum with unseen energy. His gaze darted from one man to another, calculating. "Ma'am, sir," the officer said slowly, "where exactly did you find this dog?" "At the shelter," Mr. Harper replied. "We adopted him 5 days ago." "Why?" The officer exchanged a look with his partner, then turned toward Dr. Ellis. "You verified the chip?" The vet nodded reluctantly. "Yes, and I cross-checked it 3 times. It's real. It's government-coded." "What's that supposed to mean?" Mrs. Harper asked, her hands tightening around Lily's shoulders. The officer took a deep breath. "That dog's not a normal rescue. His microchip is registered under a classified defense project that was decommissioned years ago." Eclipse's ears twitched. His muscles flexed subtly as if understanding every word. Jack stepped forward before his mother could stop him. "He's not dangerous. He saved us from someone who tried to break in." The officer's eyes softened for just a moment. Maybe he did. But if that's true, it's because of what he was trained to do. Dr. Ellis whispered. "You need to call command now." Another officer stepped outside, speaking urgently into his radio. Mr. Harper's voice cracked. "Trained for what?" The lead officer met his eyes. "Military operations, special K-9 units, classified experiments. These animals were enhanced for combat situations." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Lily began to cry, clutching Eclipse's neck. "He's not a weapon. He's family." Eclipse didn't move. He stood protectively in front of the little girl, positioning himself between her and the officers, a low, warning growl vibrating in his chest. The lead officer slowly raised his hands, signaling his team to stand down. "We're not here to hurt him," he said quietly, "but we need to know how he ended up in your home." Dr. Ellis's voice broke the silence. Because someone didn't want him to be found, and for the first time, even the officers looked uneasy. The room seemed to shrink as the officer's words hung heavy in the air. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly, and every heartbeat felt louder than the last. Harper clutched her daughter closer, her voice trembling. "What do you mean enhanced? What does that even mean?" The lead officer exhaled, removing his cap. "Years ago," he began, "there was a classified military program known as Project Argus, an experimental K-9 initiative. The goal was to create a line of dogs with heightened strength, intelligence, and survival instincts, capable of performing tasks no ordinary animal could." Dr. Ellis nodded grimly. "They combined genetic conditioning with behavioral implants," he added. "The results were unpredictable." Mr. Harper frowned, shaking his head. "You're saying our dog was part of some kind of experiment?" "Yes," the officer replied quietly. "Eclipse isn't just a dog. He's one of the prototypes from that project, officially terminated 3 years ago after a series of incidents." "Mrs." Harper's breath caught incidents. The officer hesitated before continuing. 2 handlers were seriously injured during training. 1 was never found. The surviving units were ordered to be destroyed to prevent public exposure. "But that's impossible," Mr. Harper said, disbelief in his voice. "He's gentle. He saved us." "Exactly. The officer said he was trained to protect, but those instincts were designed for combat zones, not homes." As if sensing the tension, Eclipse stepped forward, his golden eyes glinting under the harsh light. He didn't snarl, but there was an awareness in his expression. Too calm, too human. The officer's hand hovered near his holster, but Eclipse didn't move. He simply stared back, unblinking. Dr. Ellis pulled up the scan data on his tablet. "This isn't just a chip," he said. "There's embedded hardware in the base of his skull, a command interface. It's deactivated, but it was built to respond to encrypted radio signals." The words made Mrs. Harper's knees weaken. "You mean someone could control him?" "In theory," the vet said softly, "but someone didn't want that. Look at this. His implant's been manually cut off from remote access. Whoever freed him risked everything to do it." The officer studied the screen, his brow furrowing. That would explain why he disappeared before the program's termination. One of the scientists might have taken pity on him. Lily, tears streaking her cheeks, whispered, "He's not bad. He just wants to be loved." The officer looked at her, then back at Eclipse. "Maybe so," he admitted. "But if this chip went active again, he could become dangerous without meaning to." Dr. Ellis closed his tablet and looked at the family gravely. "You have to decide quickly. Either we hand him over for deactivation, or you take him home and pretend none of this ever happened." Mrs. Harper's eyes filled with disbelief. "You're asking us to give up the dog who saved our lives?" Before anyone could respond, Eclipse let out a low growl, his gaze fixed on the door. Everyone turned through the clinic's glass. His headlights flashed, 2 black SUVs pulling up fast, tires screeching to a halt. The officer's radio crackled. "This is command. Contain the subject immediately. Do not let him leave the premises." The officer's expression hardened. "They're not here for you," he said quietly, hand tightening on his weapon. "They're here for him." Eclipse took 1 step forward, his stance low, muscles ready, and for the first time, everyone in the room understood. This wasn't just a rescue story, it was a countdown. The instant the black SUV stopped outside, Eclipse's posture changed. His eyes hardened, and a deep, instinctive growl rippled through the air. But before anyone could move, everything around Mr. Harper blurred. The sirens, the shouts, even the pounding of his heart faded. It was as though the moment froze, pulling him and the audience into the dog's haunted past. Flashback. Years earlier, inside a dim military testing facility, rows of reinforced kennels lined the walls. Each contained a creature bred not for companionship, but precision. Engineered soldiers with muscle density beyond natural limits, implanted sensors and conditioned loyalty to voice frequencies. A voice echoed from the control room. Unit 07 commence cognitive response test. A younger Eclipse, sleek, muscular, yet restrained by heavy restraints, lifted his head. Electrodes traced his skull, a faint scar marking the base of his neck where the command implant had been placed. Scientists behind the glass observed his every movement. Stimulus A, one said. A holographic figure appeared from an armed intruder. Eclipse's pupils constricted. His body snapped into motion, instincts firing. Within seconds, he had disarmed the simulated target with machine-like precision. No hesitation. No mercy. Then came the real test. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and a handler entered. A woman named Dr. Sarah Klein. Unlike the others, she didn't carry commands, only compassion. She knelt beside the cage. "You're not a weapon," she whispered. "You're just scared, aren't you?" Eclipse tilted his head, ears twitching at her gentle tone. It was the first time he hadn't growled, but the peace didn't last. Orders came down. "Terminate Project Argus. Unstable subjects. All units to be destroyed." Dr. Klein's voice trembled as she argued with her superior. "He's different. He obeys without aggression." But no one listened. That night, the sirens wailed, and one by one, the cages opened. Not for freedom, but for disposal. In the chaos, Sarah acted. She hacked the control terminal, cut the command signal, and removed Eclipse's implant connection. Blood pooled under her gloves, but she smiled weakly. "Go," she whispered, opening the gate. "Run before they find you." The memory dissolved into darkness. Back in the present, Eclipse stood before the clinic door, every muscle ready, golden eyes burning with memory, not of violence, but survival. He wasn't just escaping the past. He was protecting the only family that had ever chosen him freely. The officers surrounded the clinic, their radios crackling with clipped commands. Inside, the Harpers stood frozen, hearts pounding as Eclipse remained by Lily's side, silent, alert, unflinching. The lead officer gestured toward the dog. "You need to hand him over now. He's a government asset, not a household pet." Mrs. Harper shook her head instantly. "No, he's not an asset. He's family." "Ma'am," the officer said, his tone steady but urgent. "You don't understand the danger you're in. That animal was built for military use. His instincts don't belong in civilian life." But Lily stepped forward before her parents could answer. "He's not dangerous. He sleeps in my room. He protects us." Her voice cracked with tears. "He's good." The officer hesitated, seeing the little girl's trembling hands gripping Eclipse's collar. For a brief moment, emotion flickered across his stern face, but then he exhaled sharply and turned back to the vet. "Is it true?" His implants cut off. Dr. Ellis nodded. "Yes. Someone severed the neural link. He's free-thinking now. He responds to emotion, not commands." The officer's jaw clenched. "That's exactly why he's unpredictable." Mr. Harper stepped forward, voice steady, but defiant. "He hasn't hurt anyone. He saved us from a break-in, and he's done nothing but protect my kids. If he were dangerous, we'd already know." Mrs. Harper added softly, He's not some weapon to be locked away. He's different. Maybe that's why he found us." Eclipse turned his head toward her voice, his gaze calm, steady, almost human. For a fleeting second, even the officer seemed uncertain. A younger officer whispered to his partner, "He doesn't look like a threat." But the lead officer shook his head. "You don't see what I've seen. These units were perfect until something broke inside them. They don't know friend from foe when triggered." Lily pressed her face into Eclipse's shoulder, whispering, "You'd never hurt us, right?" Eclipse lowered his head, resting it gently against hers. His eyes softened, a silent promise shining in them. Mrs. Harper looked up at the officer's voice, steady despite her fear. "You can take your paperwork and your warnings, but this dog stays with us." Outside, engines idled, lights flashing through the glass. The officers exchanged tense glances. For the first time, it wasn't clear who they were protecting. The family from Eclipse, or Eclipse from the world that created him. The house was silent that night, wrapped in an uneasy calm. The Harpers had returned home under police warning, the tension hanging like a storm cloud. Mrs. Harper locked every door and checked each window twice, but her mind couldn't rest. Outside, the forest loomed darker than usual, every rustle amplified by fear. Eclipse hadn't moved since they returned. He sat by the back door, head lowered, ears twitching at faint sounds no human could hear. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, a quiet fire burning behind them. Around midnight, a distant crack broke the silence. Not thunder, a sharp metallic sound. Eclipse's head snapped up, a low growl rolled from his chest. Upstairs, Mr. Harper stirred half asleep. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. But before he could rise, Eclipse lunged toward the back door, claws scraping against the tile. His growl turned into a bark, a deep commanding sound that jolted everyone awake. Lily sat up in bed. "Mom!" Mrs. Harper grabbed her robe and hurried downstairs. "Eclipse!" she whispered sharply, but it was too late. The dog's body was tense, his gaze fixed on the backyard. Beyond the glass, the motion sensor light flickered on, revealing faint movement by the fence. Mr. Harper appeared behind her, flashlight in hand. "Stay here," he said quietly, unlocking the door. But the moment it creaked open, Eclipse bolted through the gap like a bullet vanishing into the night. "Eclipse!" Lily screamed from upstairs. The forest erupted with noise, branches snapping, low growls echoing through the dark. Then something else followed. Muffled voices, footsteps. The crack of a gunshot split the air. Mrs. Harper gasped, clinging to her husband. "They're back!" Mr. Harper rushed outside, the flashlight beam darting between trees. "Eclipse!" he yelled, but only rustling answered. Another shot fired, followed by a sharp yelp that froze his blood. Moments later, silence, then movement. From the shadows, Eclipse emerged, limping, fur streaked with blood. His eyes gleamed fiercely as he staggered toward the porch. In his jaws, a torn piece of black fabric, part of a tactical glove. Mr. Harper dropped to his knees. "Oh my God, you saved us again." Eclipse collapsed, breathing heavily, but his gaze never left the tree line. Somewhere out there, someone had fled. By the time police arrived, the intruders were gone. The officers found footprints leading towards the woods, matching the same boots from the earlier break-in. An officer knelt beside the blood-stained dog. "Whatever he is," he said quietly, "he's not the threat." Mrs. Harper brushed a trembling hand over Eclipse's head. "He's the reason we're alive." The night ended in a blur of flashing lights and whispered questions. But one truth settled deep in the family's hearts. Eclipse hadn't just defended them out of instinct. He had done it out of choice. Dawn crept over Willow Bend in shades of gray and gold, revealing a backyard torn by the chaos of the night. Mud tracks, broken branches, and dark smears told a story no one wanted to relive. Mr. Harper stood on the porch, still in his night clothes, flashlight in one hand, the other resting on Eclipse's head. The dog limped but refused to lie down, eyes fixed on the tree line where the intruders had vanished. Police cars arrived soon after sunrise, tires crunching over gravel. Officers fanned out through the property, snapping photos, measuring boot prints. The lead investigator, a weary man with sharp eyes, crouched near the damaged fence. "Same size and tread as before," he muttered. "Whoever these people are, they're trained." Mrs. Harper clutched a blanket around her shoulders, her voice thin. "They were after him again, weren't they?" The officer didn't answer immediately. He looked toward Eclipse, who stood perfectly still despite the wound on his leg. "If I had to guess," he said quietly, "they weren't here to harm you. They came to take him back." Mr. Harper's jaw tightened. Not a chance. Eclipse limped toward a patch of disturbed earth and sniffed the air. He barked once, a low, deep, deliberate. The officer followed the direction and found a trail of blood that wasn't the dog's. It led deeper into the forest. "Someone's hurt," Mr. Harper said. The officers followed the tracks for half a mile until they ended near a shallow stream. There, half buried under leaves, they found a small black device, metallic, charred, marked with faint serial numbers. The lead officer frowned. Military-grade transmitter deactivated. Dr. Ellis, who had come to check on Eclipse, examined it and paled. "That's a signal relay. It could have been used to reactivate his implant remotely." Mrs. Harper's hand flew to her mouth. "You mean they were trying to control him again?" "Exactly," the vet replied. "But it looks like he fought it off, like his body rejected the signal." The realization sent chills through everyone. Eclipse hadn't just defended them. He had fought against what he was designed to become. As the sun rose higher, the dog finally lay down, resting his head on Lily's lap. She stroked his fur gently, whispering, "You don't have to fight anymore." But Eclipse's gaze lingered on the woods, calm yet ready. Deep inside, he knew the battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. 2 days passed after the attack. The Harper house had turned into a temporary fortress, locks reinforced, curtains drawn, the family sleeping in shifts. Eclipse was healing, though the wound on his leg still ached. He barely slept, his gaze constantly sweeping between windows and doors, as if expecting another threat. That morning, Dr. Ellis called. His voice was tight with urgency. "Mr. Harper, I need to see you. It's about the blood sample I took after the incident." Mr. Harper's stomach sank. "Is something wrong with him?" "Just come in," the vet replied. "And bring Eclipse with you." The family drove in silence. Lily sat in the back seat with her hand resting on Eclipse's neck, whispering softly, "You're going to be okay, right?" The dog didn't move, but his tail gave one faint thump against the seat. Reassurance, or maybe goodbye. At the clinic, Dr. Ellis met them at the door. He looked exhausted, eyes shadowed with worry. "I reran the tests," he said. "Something in his blood isn't normal." He led them into the lab where a monitor displayed molecular scans. "See these traces," he said, pointing to faint chemical signatures. "These are tranquilizer compounds, heavy-duty ones designed for capture, not sedation." Mrs. Harper frowned. "You mean someone tried to drug him?" "Yes," the vet replied grimly. "And more than once. The chemicals in his system weren't fresh. Some date back weeks, maybe even before you adopted him. Whoever's after him has been tracking him for a long time." Mr. Harper clenched his fists. "So that break-in? It wasn't random?" "Doctor, Ellis finished. They were trying to retrieve what they think still belongs to them. Lily hugged Eclipse tightly, her voice breaking. They can't have him. Dr. Ellis lowered his voice. Listen to me carefully. I forwarded the scan to an old contact, a biochemist who once worked under the Argus project. He said the compound in Eclipse's bloodstream can also be used as a signal blocker. Someone's been protecting him, shielding him from reactivation. Mrs. Harper's breath caught. Protecting him? From who? The vet's gaze hardened. From the people who built him. They're not done yet. Outside, a black SUV turned slowly onto the Harper Street. Its tinted windows caught the sunlight for only a moment before disappearing behind the trees. Eclipse lifted his head and growled. The hunt had started again. Night fell fast, swallowing Willow Bend in a shroud of quiet tension. The Harpers had barely made it home from the vet before unease settled over the house. Every creak, every gust of wind felt amplified. Eclipse paced near the front door, his limp barely visible now, his body rigid and alert. He could sense something coming. Mr. Harper checked the locks again, while Mrs. Harper tucked Lily and Jack into their room. "Everything's fine," she whispered, though her voice betrayed the lie. The faint hum of distant engines drifted through the air. Then came the lights. Headlights. 2. No. 3 vehicles rolled slowly up the dirt road, stopping just beyond the gate. Engines cut off. Silence followed. Mr. Harper's stomach turned. "They're here." Before he could grab the phone, Eclipse growled low and warning, the sound vibrating through the walls. The front porch creaked under heavy boots, then a firm knock. Mrs. Harper whispered, "Don't open it," but the knocking turned into pounding. "Mr. Harper," a cold voice called through the door. "This is Agent Riley, Defense Department. Step outside. We need to collect the animal." "Collect?" Mr. Harper snapped. "He's not property," the voice sharpened. "That animal is government technology. You are harboring classified material. Don't make this harder!" Before Mr. Harper could answer, the front window shattered, glass exploding inward as a flash grenade rolled across the floor. Eclipse barked, lunging towards the door, teeth bared, body shielding Lily as chaos erupted. "Get down!" Mr. Harper shouted. The blast filled the room with white light and ringing ears. Silhouettes moved through the haze, armed men in tactical suits. But Eclipse was faster. He hit the first intruder mid-step, knocking him flat, jaws snapping around the man's wrist. The soldier screamed, dropping his weapon. Another raised a tranquilizer gun, but fired, but Eclipse twisted away the dart grazing his shoulder. He didn't stop. He leaped again, tackling a second man, snarling, eyes blazing gold in the flickering light. "Eclipse, stop!" Lily cried, tears streaming down her face. The dog froze mid-lunge, chest heaving, his gaze flicking toward her voice. That brief hesitation saved her life. Because at that same moment, Mr. Harper tackled the last intruder near the kitchen door. The gun went off, the shot burying itself in the wall, inches from Lily's head. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time. The men outside scrambled back to their vehicles, dragging their injured partners with them. Within seconds, the SUVs peeled away into the darkness, tires kicking up gravel. The living room was a wreck. Glass, smoke, blood, and silence. Eclipse stood in the middle of it all, panting, his eyes still glowing faintly as adrenaline faded. He looked toward Lily, tail barely moving, waiting for her reaction. She ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "You saved us again," she whispered. Outside, the flashing blue lights approached. Inside, amid the wreckage, the family clung to the one creature the world had tried to destroy, and realized he'd risked everything to protect them. By the time dawn touched the horizon, the Harpers' home looked like a war zone. Broken glass glittered across the floor. Bullet holes scarred the walls, and the faint smell of gunpowder lingered in the air. Police officers swarmed the property, taking photos, collecting evidence, whispering among themselves about the men in tactical gear who had vanished before backup arrived. Mrs. Harper sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes vacant as she held Lily close. The little girl clutched Eclipse's collar, refusing to let go. The dog sat beside her, exhausted, his fur matted with blood, one ear torn, but his gaze still fierce, always watching. Inside, Mr. Harper gave his statement for the third time. "They said they were government agents," he repeated, voice hoarse, but no badges, no IDs, no warrants. "They came for him." The sheriff, an older man with tired eyes, nodded grimly. "We've contacted federal authorities. If what you're saying is true, someone's gone rogue." Just then, headlights appeared on the driveway again. But this time it wasn't an ambush. A convoy of official black SUVs pulled in, followed by an ambulance. From the lead vehicle stepped a woman in a gray suit, her presence commanding yet calm. She approached slowly, raising her hands to show she meant no harm. "I'm Special Agent Vaughn," she said, flashing a genuine badge. "We've been tracking the rogue Argus operatives for months. They weren't supposed to find you." Mrs. Harper's voice shook. "Then you knew about him? About Eclipse?" Agent Vaughn nodded. "Yes, his real designation is K9007, the only surviving Argus prototype. He escaped during the shutdown. We assumed he died, but it seems he chose a different kind of mission." "What kind of mission?" Mr. Harper asked. "To protect," the agent said softly. When he was freed, the last command entered into his neural core wasn't attack or obey. It was guard. It seems he interpreted that on his own terms. Dr. Ellis, who had arrived earlier, shook his head in awe. "He's evolved past programming. He's making moral choices." The agent knelt in front of Eclipse, her tone filled with respect. "You weren't supposed to survive." "But you did, and you saved lives doing it." Lily hugged Eclipse tighter. "You can't take him away," she whispered. "Please don't." Agent Vaughn looked at the family, then at the battered dog. "No one's taking him anywhere tonight? He's earned peace." She turned to her team. "Arrest warrants for the rogue agents go out today and make sure the family is protected." As the morning light grew stronger, Eclipse finally relaxed, lowering his head onto Lily's lap. The battle was over for now. The Harpers had lost their safety, their sense of normal life. But they'd gained something far greater. A soldier who'd found his heart. A family that refused to give up on him. And a world that was finally beginning to understand that even the most engineered creatures could still choose love. 3 weeks later, the Harper home stood quiet again. Repairs had been made, walls patched, and shattered glass replaced, but the house no longer felt the same. Each night felt emptier, quieter, as if something was missing from the air itself. Eclipse had recovered from his injuries, but he was different now. He spent hours outside on the porch, staring toward the horizon, as if waiting for a signal. Only he could hear. He ate less, slept less, and seemed distant. One morning, a familiar black SUV appeared in the driveway. This time, no weapons, no shouting, just Agent Vaughn stepping out, holding a sealed envelope. Mrs. Harper met her halfway down the path, her heart sinking. Vaughn's expression was kind but solemn. "The department reviewed his case," she said softly. "They're assigning him to a special humanitarian division. Search and rescue disaster response situations where his instincts can save lives." Lily ran out onto the porch, panic in her eyes. "You're taking him!" she cried. "You promised he could stay." Agent Vaughn knelt beside her. "He'll be safe, sweetheart. And he'll be helping people just like he helped you." Tears filled the girl's eyes. "But he belongs here." Eclipse stood and walked toward them, tail low, eyes calm but full of understanding. He pressed his head gently against Lily's chest, letting out a soft whine, almost a goodbye. She hugged him tightly, whispering through sobs. "Don't forget me, okay? Please don't forget." Mr. Harper swallowed hard, trying to stay composed. "Is there really no way?" Vaughn shook her head. "He's too well known now. Keeping him here would put your family at risk. But I promise you this, he won't be treated like a weapon again." Eclipse stepped into the open SUV without hesitation. Before the door closed, he turned his head one last time. His eyes met Lily's through the glass, glowing faintly gold under the morning sun. The engine started, and the car rolled away down the dirt road. Lily stood in silence until it disappeared beyond the trees. Harper knelt beside her daughter, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He'll always find his way back to us," she whispered. "That's what heroes do." And somewhere in the distance, as the convoy faded into the horizon, a faint echo of a bark drifted through the wind, low, steady, and full of promise. Eclipse was gone. But the bond he left behind would never break. A year passed since that quiet morning when the black SUV had driven away, carrying Eclipse toward his new life. Seasons changed, and though the Harper family had rebuilt their peace, the memory of him never faded. His paw prints still marked the porch. His favorite spot beneath the oak tree remained untouched. Sometimes at night, Lily swore she could still hear his footsteps pacing outside her window. Life moved on, but not entirely. Mr. Harper took a new job closer to home. Mrs. Harper volunteered at the local shelter, and Lily, now a little taller and braver, spent her afternoons drawing pictures of dogs with golden eyes and hearts of heroes. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived. The envelope bore no return address, only a government seal faintly embossed on the corner. Mrs. Harper's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The letter read, "To the Harper family, K-7, codename Eclipse, has been reassigned to Special Operations Humanitarian Division. His unit assists in disaster response in child rescue missions around the world. Last month, he located 4 missing children trapped in earthquake rubble in Chile. He hasn't forgotten you." Enclosed is a photo from his most recent deployment. Below the text was the image Eclipse standing proudly amid the ruins of a collapsed building. Dust coating his dark fur, golden eyes alert and calm. Beside him, 2 children clung to his side, smiling through tears. Lily touched the photo gently, her lips quivering into a smile. "He's still saving people," she whispered. Mr. Harper exhaled slowly. He found his purpose. Mrs. Harper's eyes filled with tears. "He always had one. We just helped him remember it. They framed the photo and hung it in the living room right above the fireplace." Beneath it, Lily placed a small collar tag engraved with the words, "Forever Family." That night, as the family sat together, a cool breeze swept through the window. The wind rustled the curtains gently, and for a brief moment they heard it, faint but unmistakable. A soft bark carried on the air. Lily looked up at the stars and smiled. "Good night, Eclipse." Somewhere far away, under a different sky, a dark silhouette paused beside a rescue tent and looked toward the same stars. His ears twitched, and his tail gave a single knowing wag. The soldier had found his peace.